Folks, thanks for coming out. It's very tough news today with the Department of Statistics confirming what Kiwis know. Inflation has risen, that battle continues, and one thing that's critical to fighting inflation is saving money. Very pleased to see the government's announcement of a Waikato med school at $200 million less than originally proposed. If we could save that sort of money every day, we'd be in a much, much better place as a country and an economy. It follows on from getting the electric vehicle charging program from $170 million of handouts to $68 million of repayable loans, and I believe it's critical that the government continues to save money at every opportunity, just as Kiwis are forced to in these economic circumstances. And happy to take questions.
If ACT wasn't in government, would the taxpayers be on the hook for another $200 million?
Well, look, I mean, you can't guess what the hypothetical was, but I'm very proud of the work we've done, negotiating into our coalition agreement, and then pushing hard to save money. I've got to say, from an ACT point of view, every other party campaigns on spending more. ACT's the only party that campaigns on spending less money and saving taxpayers.
You said you can't guess the hypothetical. Isn't that exactly what you did with your press release that said ACT saved the taxpayers millions of dollars?
Well, I just say there's always lots of different possibilities, but based on the facts that we do have, that's exactly what's happened.
Would you still have preferred to have gone down the route of just giving more money to Auckland and Otago?
Well, I just noticed that the government's actually done that already. We've increased the number of training spots at Auckland and Otago. We've made sure that we're working hard on retaining doctors, stopping them leaving, making them more productive, changing the capitation fees to make sure more people stay. So right across the board, the government is doing so many of the things that we've pushed for and saved $200 million, kind of puts it in a difficult position saying no.
That was an option though, right? There was another option of just sticking with Auckland and Otago.
Yeah, and I guess when people come to you and say we've figured out how to do it $200 million cheaper, it's kind of hard to say no. I think saving $200 million and getting a third med school, not a bad day.
And can you explain the difference in the numbers? Because before the election they were talking about a $380 million amount of money required, and now we're down at $230. Why that difference?
Well, basically because there's been a bigger contribution from the University of Waikato, who remember are the ones that want this, and possibly also some other contributions from philanthropists in the area, as we've had it put to us. And we think that if you can take that off the taxpayers' books, if you can take the debt off the liabilities that future New Zealand taxpayers will face, and that's the best thing we can do if we're serious about getting inflation down, is containing government spending.
So those figures were the overall cost, including the donations and also the Waikato University. So where did the $150 million that had originally been estimated above to cost go?
Well, we're not responsible for the initial estimates. We're responsible for the 280 were initially presented in government, the 80 that it got down to. That's the $200 million saving that we're concerned with, and that's money, $200 million that New Zealand taxpayers and future young taxpayers won't have to pay.
Did you set a threshold about how much, you from a party perspective would be happy that the government would pay? I.e., how did you accept that 82 was was a fair enough amount of money to spend on this?
Well, I think once you get it down to that price, suddenly the costs and benefits start to line up a lot better. So our view was that it couldn't work as it was initially proposed. It was never going to make sense to build a third medical school when you've already got two that could just expand. But once you take into account the considerable external funding that doesn't go on the taxpayer, then we look at it and we say we think that lines up.
So did you basically sit back and just force not force, but basically try and prompt University of Waikato to say we're going to stump up?
Well, bear in mind that this has been led by primarily the Minister of Health, Simeon Brown, and I think he's done a very good job on it. The role that ACT has played with its the role that ACT has played with its coalition agreement is saying, look, we're going to do this fine, but let's just check that the costs and benefits line up.
So the Prime Minister says it's more of a cabinet decision. What do you make of that?
Well, of course it's a cabinet decision, but it's a cabinet decision that takes place in a coalition government with a cabinet that's committed to keeping its coalition agreements. So in that sense, while I fully respect it's a cabinet decision, it's ultimately the decision of the Minister of Health supported by cabinet. Speaking as ACT leader about what our party brings to the table, well, that's actually recorded in the coalition agreement.
You talk a lot about how ACT pushes the government further than it may have gone if you went to the table. Other than the Treaty Principles Bill and Regulatory Standards Bill, are there any big policies that you also want to claim?
Well, I mean, I just look at the quarterly plans, and as I won't go through them all now, but many quarters we've said, look, about half the ideas here are actually ACT ideas. But if you just look at saving money, first of all, it's $200 million cheaper than initially proposed. I think that's pretty good. The EV charging started out $170 million handout, now a $68 million loan that theoretically the government will get back. That's a lot of money. You look at my savings exercise in the 2025 budget, $115 million. My savings exercise in the 2024 budget, $500 million. Brooke Van Velden whipping pay equity into shape, so it's actually focused on gender equity, $13 billion over 4 years. So, these are substantial amounts of saving that I think ACT can claim.
What do you make?
Sorry.
What do you make of Nicola Willis having a meeting with Fonterra tomorrow night to ask them to explain high butter prices?
Well, as I understand it, they actually asked to meet with her, and I'm sure they'll be talking about a lot of things. There's always a lot of emphasis on the idea that butter is somehow the issue. The fact is that some things are up, some things are down. I filled up my car at 91, 235 the other day. I thought that was pretty good. These things are driven by global markets, including the dairy trade. The GDT is high. That's a good thing for New Zealand's economy. I think the real challenge is when the farmers are getting good prices, is the rest of our economy productive enough for New Zealanders to pay it? That's the real challenge, and that's why we need regulatory standards. That's why we need a smaller, more efficient government. That's why we need to focus on productivity, which I'm proud to say I think the government has.
But realistically, what we should be able to achieve, you just pointed out, it's about supply and demand and things outside of Fonterra's direct control per se.
Yeah, but my understanding is that, as the Prime Minister said on the radio this morning, actually they've asked her for the meeting. It's not for me to comment on her meeting. I'm sure there'll be a range of topics, though. I could only imagine Minister of Finance and the biggest company or co-op in New Zealand, and I believe that they'll have a range of things to talk about. I think Nicola Willis, very smart, very economically literate. I'm sure she doesn't need them to talk about how the milk price is set. She worked at Fonterra for 5 years, so I think people have probably over-egged that aspect of any meeting she's having.
Just back on the medical school, is there kind of any, concrete example of something that was in that initial, costings that was going to be done for the medical school that now isn't going to be done now?
Look, I think if you want to get into the detail of what's now being funded, then it's best to talk to Simeon Brown. It's his policy in his area. I'm just here to point out that 280 at the beginning, 82 million now. It's a $200 million saving, and I think it's a very good example of requiring cost-benefit analysis, saving the taxpayer money.
But I know that you're trumpeting that saving. I guess I'm asking you for an example of where that saving has come from. I don't think that's an unfair question to ask.
Well, I actually think it's a fair question to ask the Minister who's responsible for making the savings. I just make the point that they've occurred as a result of ACT support, and also the fact that we've said, look, we support doing this, but the caveat is, let's really sharpen our pencils and do cost-benefit analysis.
Was it the case that you were effectively, along the lines of Craig's question, that you were waiting out on the university to effectively pull its weight before you came to the table and said we have a deal?
Sorry, you said Craig's question?
Yeah.
Sorry, this Craig, right.
This Craig.
Yeah.
Were you waiting? Was it a case of waiting, because this has been going on for a long time, were you waiting out the university?
No, look, our role, my role was simply to enforce our coalition agreement, which is that we're very happy to support it, but let's see the work and let's sharpen the pencils. And as it turned out, that happened to the extent we had to say, look, it's hard to be against us at this price.
How many rounds of negotiations did it take, i.e. University of Waikato coming back and saying, all right, we'll put in this amount, how many times?
Well, again, I mean, that's a set of meetings and events that may or may not have happened between the responsible minister and us. I haven't got involved. I'm not taking responsibility for another minister's policy area. What I am taking responsibility for is ACT's role, saying, look, we got to sharpen our pencils if we're going to do this.
Yeah. Did it get close at all to agree-disagree status for you?
Well, we always look at all of the options, but it's far more preferable if we can have differences come together, achieve a better result for the New Zealand public.
But how close did it get, if at all?
Well, I never negotiate, through the media.
Well, you're done now. The negotiation's done.
Yeah, I don't do post hoc negotiations either.
Minister, what do you say to Sir Dr. Colin Tukutonga from the University of Auckland, who says that potentially investing in more spaces in the already existing medical schools and making a new one is a better investment and overall better for getting more doctors in the field?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's an argument that the universities of Auckland and Otago have made. Ultimately, our thing was do the full cost-benefit analysis, compare the different options, and again, I don't want to speak for the responsible minister on that issue. Nonetheless, we saw that full cost-benefit analysis. We weighed up Auckland and Otago versus Waikato, and along with the considerable savings that were brought to the table, I think that the taxpayer got a really great deal.
Are you aware of any cuts that the university may have to make as a result of putting so much money and potentially, 150 million into this new school?
Well, that's entirely up to them, but
Are you aware of any though?
no, I'm not.
Right.
So.
Would you be comfortable if they did have to?
Well, I think universities have to be able to manage themselves. There are some countries where politicians tell the universities what to do. We're trying to stay away from that
Certainly,
here.
but if they had to, because this is a policy that your government has supported now, right? With
Yeah.
that. So if they had to do that, would you be comfortable with it?
Yeah, because I trust universities to manage themselves. If our universities can't prioritise their resources and manage ourselves, how are they going to be at the cutting edge of science and society?
Can you clarify just exactly what ACT's position is on the prospect of a rates cap?
Look, I think a rates cap is a wonderful idea so long as you can control the cost. Remember, if you can't control the council's cost, if you can control the council's cost, then maybe you don't need a rate cap. If you can't control the council's cost, you cap the rates anyway, they're just going to neglect their infrastructure, go broke or whatever. That's not desirable. So, yep, love the idea of a rates cap. Make sure you actually know how you're going to get their costs down first, and that means RMA reform, Local Government Act reform, temporary traffic management being cheaper, regulatory reform and health and safety. If you can't contain the cost, then a rates cap won't actually work. If you can contain the cost, then you may or may not need one.
So Simon Watts has gone away to have a look at it, and he'll come back with a proposal before Christmas. What are you looking for in that you will need to see in order to support it?
Well, it has to be viable. So we don't want councils to basically have no set of income and massive liabilities to maintain their infrastructure. We've got to find ways that they can get it done cheaper. So, for example, I look at what Brooke Van Velden and Chris Bishop are doing around temporary traffic management. That has the potential to save hundreds of millions of dollars a year in Auckland. If you do that, maybe you can start talking about, okay, we can actually starve off your income because you're taking too much, 12.2%. It's just people can't afford it, right? But let's not put the cart before the horse and cap the rates before we find ways to cut the red tape and cut council's expenses.
Sounds like you think it's a bit simplistic or unrealistic.
Oh, I mean, look, ACT has campaigned many times on a rates cap. It's been an ACT policy for decades. I think Rodney Hyde used to campaign on it comprehensively. But I just make the point that, rate cap's a great idea, but where's your implementation? How are you going to make sure that they can still do the things that people expect them to do while you have a rates cap? And that means you've got to take cost out. You've got to take red tape out. All right, folks, thank you very much for your time. See ya.
Cheers.